Oh, there it is. Testing, 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 testing.
Okay.
Yes, working now. Thank you. Okay, board members, are we ready to begin?
Yes, sir.
All right. Hearing no objection, we will continue. All right. I'll call the meeting to order for the American Canyon Fire Protection District Board meeting for September 26, 2023. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Board Member Abudamus?
Here.
Board Member Joseph?
Here.
Board Member Oro?
Here.
Vice Chair Washington?
Here.
Chair Garcia?
Here. Thank you all. Well, moving on to report on closed session, confirmation of reportable action. Mr. Ross?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board and members of the public, we convened in open session at 5:31 and then ascertained that there were no comments on the matters agendized for closed session and adjourned at 5:31 to address them. There was clarification provided by District Counsel, myself, that one of the matters under potential litigation was actually existing litigation, Denise Lynn Sanchez v. Glenn Elton Wicks, Napa County Superior Court case number 21 CV 000455. You concluded closed session at 6:09. So with respect to each of the matters agendized for closed session as clarified in the description just given, and we'll do a written report under the provisions of Government Code Section 5497.1B. You concluded at 6:09 p.m. That would conclude the report unless there are questions.
Any questions from board members?
No, sir.
Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Ross. We'll move on with our agenda this evening. We're now at proclamations and presentations. With great pleasure and with great honor to recognize contributions from a member of our fire district. Thank you. First up is CERT Month proclamation. The CERT members want to come to the podium, please. It's part of our formalities.
Lower it for you. Do you want it lowered?
Can you get a picture? Oh, Watts is going to get a picture, you guys. Very good, thank you. I'll read the proclamation now. American Canyon Fire Protection District, proclaiming the month of October 2023 as National Community Emergency Response Team Month. Whereas community safety and disaster preparedness are of paramount importance to the well-being and resilience of our citizens. And whereas the Community Emergency Response Team, CERT program has consistently demonstrated its commitment to educating and empowering individuals to effectively respond to emergencies, thereby enhancing the overall safety and preparedness of our community. And whereas the CERT program, through its comprehensive training and hands-on exercises, equips participants with life-saving skills, such as basic first aid and disaster communication. And whereas the dedication and volunteerism exhibited by CERT members serve as an exemplary model of civic engagement, as they selflessly offer their time and expertise to support our community in times of crisis. And whereas the collaborative effort of CERT members, alongside the American Canyon Fire Protection District, have consistently showcased the positive impact of citizen involvement in disaster response and recovery. And whereas the CERT program stands as a testament to the unwavering spirit of community cooperation and preparedness, serving as an inspiration for all residents to take an active role in ensuring the safety and well-being of our neighbors. Now, therefore, I, Leon Garcia, Chairman of the Board, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as Community Emergency Response Team Awareness Month, and urge all residents to recognize the invaluable contribution of CERT members to participate in CERT training opportunities and to continue fostering a culture of preparedness within our community. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Third. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for not skipping me.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thanks, brother. Thank you. Thank you.
Skip me, no, thank you. Thank you.
Right, and now if you'd like to comment, we'd like to hear from you.
I'm going to try, but I don't have much of a voice, thanks to the smoke in the valley this weekend. First, I'd like to thank the board and the chief, assistant chief, and our battalion chief Prettyman, our liaison, for his help with us with the fire department. Paul wanted me to send his thanks, let you know that he would like to be here, but he had a prior engagement. We are looking forward to continuing our collaboration with the fire district. You know, CERT is near and dear to all of our hearts. We've been in it for 6 years now, and we definitely appreciate the proclamation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh. Well, I certainly, as everyone knows, have a personal interest in that as a board member of the CERT team. So, very good to our contributions are extensive throughout, not only touching lives in American Canyon, but through the whole valley. So we thank you for that operation. Okay. Next, we move on to Fire Prevention Month's proclamation. American Canyon Fire Protection District proclaiming the month month of October 2023 is Fire Prevention Month. Whereas the American Canyon Fire Protection District is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our state. Whereas fire is a serious public concern, both locally, nationally, and homes that are locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas home fires killed more than 2,800 people in the United States in 2021, according to the National Fire Protection Association. And fire departments in the United States responded to 338 home fires. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, and fire departments respond to more than 166,400 annually between 2016 and 2020. And whereas 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of these fires resulting from unattended cooking. And whereas more than half of the reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occur when victims try to fight the fire themselves. And whereas children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire. And whereas American Canyon residents should turn pot handles toward the back of the stove, always keep a lid nearby when cooking, keep a 3-foot kid-free zone around the stove, oven, and other things that could get hot. Watch what they heat, set a timer to remind them that they are cooking, and whereas residents who have planned and practiced home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires by as much as half. And whereas American Canyon's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention, protection, education. And whereas American Canyon residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas in 2023, Fire Prevention Week theme, cooking safety starts with you. Pay attention to fire prevention. Effectively serves to remind us to stay alert to the use and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Leon Garcia, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District, hereby proclaim October 23, 2023 as Fire Prevention Month and urge all the people of American Canyon to check their kitchen for fire hazards and use safe cooking practices during Fire Prevention Week 2023 and support the many public safety activities and efforts as the fire district's fire and emergency services. Thank you. And Chief Elliott?
Thank you, Chair. Chief Campbell will be accepting the proclamation. Unfortunately, the individual we had scheduled had an illness and was unable to attend tonight, so thank you.
Please extend our appreciation to that person. And also we have a sudden cardiac arrest proclamation. American Canyon Fire Protection District proclaiming the month of October 2023 as Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. Whereas sudden cardiac arrest is a life-threatening emergency that occurs when the heart suddenly stops beating and can occur in someone who may or may not even be diagnosed with heart disease. Whereas approximately 1,000 people in the United States experience sudden cardiac arrest every day, and currently only about 10% survive. However, when bystanders intervene immediately, giving CPR, survival rates double or triple. And whereas survival depends on a bystander recognizing that a sudden cardiac arrest has occurred, calling 911, starting CPR, and using an automatic external defibrillator, if available, as soon as possible. And whereas American Canyon Fire Protection District encourages businesses and organizations with an automatic external defibrillator to register at their AED locations with the Napa County Emergency Medical Services, so these life-saving devices can be disclosed to 911 dispatchers and those nearby during cardiac emergency. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Leon Garcia, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District, hereby proclaim October 2023 is Cardiac Awareness Month. Thank you all. Thank you for what you're doing out there. Chad?
Miles of dying.
We're gonna actually have the rest of the crews come up here if they want to.
Oh, yeah. Come on up. No, you guys got to come up.
It's a collective thing. It's not just one person. They will, obviously, as a team, we've talked to you before that in the past, and it really is the entire membership that should be recognized here.
Go get up for, here we go. Thank you. Thank you.
It should go on the record. This is the first time I've seen these guys shy or bashful.
All right.
Thank you guys again for recognizing this for the whole department. Going back to this, we have talked about our hands-only CPR program. We've been doing that for 10 years. It's an awesome thing we do in our community. It's pretty special. Like I said, we're leading 10% of the way. Some things that we haven't talked about that we do in this community that are totally unique is, well, on our first out engines, we have what's called a Lucas device. It's a CPR device.
Yes.
It's the one, to be honest, if I want CPR done on myself, that's what I'd like to have. It never does it wrong. It never gets tired. It's pretty unique where this city has 3 of them. Most agencies, when we talk about it with the county, our little local agencies, they might be on a BC rig, but they're not on the first out engine. So when we have an engine pull up to your house, we have this life-saving tool that's coming off this engine and onto your loved one to help assist with CPR. So that's pretty special that we got going on in this city. It was, I think we initially got the first ones on a grant by now Chief Prettyman, and I know Captain Etchison's helped with some of that too. And then another thing we haven't talked about that we're pretty unique on with it is CodeStat. It's one of those little things where after we do CPR on someone's loved one, hopefully it's all good outcomes, we get a little sheet, let's say it's 7 in the morning, we send this thing called CodeStat out with our monitor device, and we get this information back that basically tells us how we can get better or how we did better. So it's actually a pretty special device we have where Captain Etchison and Chief Prettyman actually can tell us, hey, it looks like you guys did good, and reaffirms that. And to be honest, it's been great because we get feedback from the county. The former EMS, Napa County EMS, said we're one of the better examples in the county. So when it's doing it, so it's like, hey, we're not only feel like we're doing a good job, but we actually have the paperwork behind it that says we actually are. And one testament to that would be firefighter Noah Benzman, probationary firefighter, in his first 6 weeks here was part of 2 field saves. He was the lead medic on that, so that's pretty awesome, pretty special. So again, thank you for that. And it's just one of, again, this is as a department, the whole department leading the way on making us a pretty special thing in the county when it comes to CPR.
All right, thank you.
Awesome.
Chair,
Would you like to get a photo?
yeah, we could do photos. I'd just like to tag on to, you guys aren't done yet? Get back up.
You're not done yet.
One thing I would like to just clarify on what Captain Pilkington said was the term field save. So the term field save means when we go to a house, patient is pulseless, not breathing, our paramedics, our crews administer CPR, administer drugs, secure the airway, use the Lucas device. Field save means that patient regains their pulse.
Yeah,
So
fantastic.
that's, as you saw in the proclamation, survival rates nationally are about 10%. So the fact that probationary firefighter Benson had 2 in his first shifts, he's exceeding the national rate. And quite honestly, our department as a whole is exceeding the national survival rate in CPR because of our crews, the paramedics, and the investment that we've made in emergency medical devices, training, and so forth to help better the outcome of those horrific times when someone's loved one or friend suffers a cardiac arrest.
Thank you, Chief Billy. Thank you, and thank you, all of you. You're doing an outstanding job. We know that. Would I get a photo op, and then one with the CERT team also? We're going to be over here. What's for dinner?
You know they're going to cook something right now.
Okay, well, what do we even need to do? Recognize all the contributions here. You know, it just makes America, just shows what a great community American Canyon is. I mean, it just really takes care of, we take care of people. Yes, we do. Okay, moving on in our agenda. Anything on public comment received?
No, Chair.
Okay, anybody wishing to comment, public comment from the audience attending for the fire district?
Fran Lemus. I'd just like to thank the fire department. I've used you a couple of times. It's no fun falling,
Yeah.
and when the fire department comes, it's wonderful. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to comment? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment then. Moving on in our agenda, we have agenda changes. If there's no interest in pulling an item off the consent calendar, I'll accept a motion for accepting the consent calendar.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion second, roll call, please.
Board Member Albadamos?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes, thank you all. Move on now to public hearings. We have item number 11, approve the final operating capital budget for the American Canyon Fire Protection District for fiscal year 2023-2024. Vice Chair Washington and I attended from the Financial Committee hearing on this prior to this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Ken Campo, our financial consultant. As many of you know, Ken has been helping guide the the finances of the district for many, many years. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chairman Garcia, members of the board. Again, we're here this evening to conduct a public hearing regarding the adoption of the final budget for fiscal year 2023-24. Typically, we would also cover and have an update on the unfunded liabilities of the district, but you'll probably be disappointed in that we don't have that update for you this evening. The OPEB actuarial valuation is, the next one will be as of June 30 of 23, and that's, I believe, underway at this time, so we won't have that, obviously don't have that available for you.
Do we have any approximate date?
Pardon?
Do we have a date for it yet? Or what do you think it might be?
No. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have that for you at most likely at mid-year.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And then the CalPERS valuation, which we typically have, the last one would be June 30 of 22. We're waiting for that to be released. I checked today, and it's that one's not available yet either.
Okay.
So we'll have an update on OPEB and the CalPERS unfunded liabilities for you at the mid-year budget review. So that said, we'll be turning to the final budget. So I just want to mention for those in the audience, you know, it seems like we were just here not too long ago adopting a preliminary budget for 23-24, but pursuant to the Health and Safety Code that governs fire districts, the fire district has to adopt a preliminary budget by July 1 and then a final budget by October 1. So that's why we're here this evening. And they do that to give the district time to really kind of close out the prior year, know where the beginning balance for the fiscal year is, and more importantly, it allows us time to evaluate the property tax revenue, because this fire district is a property tax-based district. Unfortunately, the county has not been able to produce those numbers yet. So probably sometime in October, you know, we'll get those final property tax numbers. I know they've had some difficulty with staffing at the county, just like the city has had difficulties in the finance department. So it's been a little problematic for us getting some final numbers, property tax numbers. So we still have the estimates that we used for the preliminary budget. So with that, we'll move on to a look at the general operating fund. This is just a summary of general fund operations. 22-23 fiscal year, you know, we were thinking we were going to come in closer to break even, but as turns out we're going to have a deficit of about $115,000, primarily due to some year-end accruals and some late overtime related to the fire academy that took place probably the last 2 weeks of June. We had some workers' compensation, one employee that was out on workers' compensation that caused some overtime. I just mentioned at this point that number for 22-23 includes a year-end property tax accrual of $111,000. As I mentioned, the county has been kind of delayed in processing things, so the city didn't actually receive, and the district did not actually receive those funds until, I think, the first week of September, which was beyond the August cutoff for the city. So the $111,000 is actually going to get carried over into into this current fiscal year, 2023-24. So when we look at this again at mid-year, the deficit for last fiscal year will go up by $111,000, and the projection for next fiscal year will go down by $111,000. So we're shifting that property tax accrual from last fiscal year into this current fiscal year. But I wanted the board to see these numbers because this is more of an apples-to-apples comparison of how we've done things in the past. So just a warning, when we look at this in mid-year, you'll see some movement, but it will not change the projected ending balance for 23-24. We're just shifting that revenue from one year to the next. Any questions on that? No? Good? Okay.
Just as a practical matter, it'll make the year that just ended, instead of 114, it's more like 220 or 30,000
Correct.
deficit. But on the flip side, the $105,000 projected deficit will appear to have gone away because you're picking up 111,000.
Correct.
Well, that,
Yep.
for presentation purposes, it'll look good, but
Yeah.
thank you for explaining the truth.
Well, and this is kind of a forewarning because you'll see the same thing on the city side. Yeah. I had a long conversation with the city's finance director about, you know, maybe bending the rules a little bit to pick up that revenue, but the auditors wanted to stick with the cutoff of August 31st. So. Okay, so that said, we did at the preliminary budget that was adopted in June showed a projected deficit of $445,000 for fiscal 23-24. We pared that down to $105,000, and we'll look at the detail on how we got there in some later slides. So we now show a projected ending balance of about $5.3 million, down a little bit from the $5.4 million in the current year. Okay, looking at the mitigation fee fund, this is the fund where we count for the developer impact fees. We have revenues projected of about $463,000. We have a transfer out to the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund, the FF&E fund for capital expenditures of about $400,000. So we have a net gain of about $63,000 there, with the projected ending balance of roughly $1.5 million. Again, these are just the summaries, and we'll look at the details. This is the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund. This is one we had a conversation when we had the Finance Committee meeting. There was an accrual of about $81,000 for last fiscal year that showed up somewhere between the preliminary budget and then the final budget. We weren't sure where that came from. We checked with the city. There actually was like an error in posting to this fund, which shouldn't have happened. So this is $81,000 better than what we were looking at when we had the Finance Committee meeting.
All right.
I just wanted to point out that the large expenditures and revenues for fiscal 22-23 reflects the advance payment for the two new Type 1 engines the district is purchasing, and the related capital financing proceeds that the debt issuance we did to fund those new engines. And then the activity for fiscal 23-24, we'll touch on that as we move through the slides. Okay, this is the little closer look at the revenues, projected revenues of the general fund, general operating fund for fiscal 23-24. There was an overall increase from their preliminary budget of about $111,000. That consists of, we bumped up investment earnings by $31,000. We're seeing an uptick in earnings as interest rates are rising. So we felt comfortable bumping that up by $31,000. We also had, we're expecting workers' compensation insurance proceeds of $71,000. So that's the $111,000. The caveat there is the $71,000 in workers' comp proceeds or for the related workers' comp expense for injured employee that's expected to be out for a period of time. So that's really just an offset to the increased expense. Looking at the mitigation fees, we pretty much the same as preliminary budget. We did bump up investment earnings here to about $24,000. The way we arrived at the mitigation fee number was looking back. We always kind of look at a rolling average of the last 5 years. That came out to about $239,000. And then we added another $200,000 for projected fees coming in from Watson Ranch. So that's how we got to the $439,000. We should also see a positive impact from the fee adjustment that the board approved last summer. It's kind of hard to tell how that's going to come in, but because we really kind of depend on the level of development activity here. It dictates the amount of revenues that come in. And then looking at the Fleet Facilities and Equipment Fund, it's an increase of $370,000 here from the preliminary budget, primarily a recognition of some lease proceeds of $125,000. Whether we use that or not depends on how much equipment we buy for the new engines. That's leftover proceeds to fund the upfitting or the purchase of safety equipment that goes onto those engines. We also are recognizing $145,000 or projecting $145,000 of grant proceeds. On your consent calendar this evening, the board approved 2 grants. One was an Office of Traffic Safety grant in the amount of $100,000 for extrication equipment, and the other was a Department of Boating and Waterways grant, almost $45,000 for the purchase of a rescue boat. That's something we had in the CIP a couple of years ago. We backed that out, thinking that the district was attempting to get that grant funded. So they were successful in doing that. So congratulations to the district. We also have about $100,000 coming in from the general fund transfer of capital related expenditures that we pulled out of the general operating fund and moved over here to be funded with the mitigation fees in an effort to kind of try and balance things out for the general operating fund and keep that operating deficit down as much as we could. So now looking at expenditures, this is looking at the general operating fund. You have an overall decrease here of about $229,000 from the preliminary budget. Salaries and benefits were reduced by roughly $361,000. If you recall, the preliminary budget had the funding for the 3rd Battalion Chief position beginning January 1, so 6 months. We've now pushed that into next fiscal year, and you'll see that in the long-range financial forecast. That $361,000, again, it was removing the funding for that 3rd Battalion Chief for 6 months, and then some anticipated vacancies that we have in the firefighter ranks that we know we're not going to be able to staff up until probably the first part of the year, the first part of 24. Now that was offset by overtime, right? So we have to backfill those vacant positions. We have to backfill for the individual that's out on workers' compensation workers' comp. And so there was about $260,000 added to overtime. And again, I mentioned we shifted about $100,000 in capital-related expenditures out of the general operating fund. And taking a closer look at some of the other expenses, we ended up reducing external fire plan reviews by about $25,000. So that all nets out to that overall decrease of $229,000. So that combined with the additional revenues reduce that projected deficit from the $400,000 level down to about $100,000. Again, this is just the mitigation fee fund. It's the only things here it does is really transfer over to the fleet facilities and equipment fund. We bumped that from $300,000 to $400,000 to cover those additional expenses that were moved out of the general operating fund. This is more of a detail on that fleet facilities and equipment fund. Overall increase of about $189,000 there. $144,000 of that are those grant-funded purchases that I mentioned earlier. The $100,000 from the general fund for various capital-related expenditures. We had about a $60,000 reduction in the facilities category. So what's in there now in facilities is, I think it's $100,000 for station alerting for James Road and $30,000 for replace flooring, I believe, at James Road. I know on your consent calendar tonight, the station alerting was about $66,000. So I don't know if that represents savings at this point or.
Yeah, we've realized savings both on the flooring from what was originally budgeted, and then we got the final quote for the station alerting system after this was put together. But it's, as you saw on the consent calendar, the cost we estimated at $100,000. It's actually coming in at $66,000. So there is a savings there as well.
So that savings will drop to the bottom line. So that should put us closer to $80,000, $90,000 balance in that fund. So this is just a summary of the board's reserve policy. The projected ending balance for 23-24, $5.3 million roughly. It's about $128,000 above the board's policy of maintaining a dry period operating reserve that's equal to about 50%, equal to 50% of general fund revenues, and a rainy day contingency reserve that's set at 20% of expenditures. So that amounts to about $5.1 million. So again, we're above the board's policy. Not a whole lot, but we're staying above that level. And this is our updated financial forecast. Again, the blue line here going across the top represents projected revenues. The red line is projected expenditures. So if the blue line is above the red line, then we're adding to those green bars the projected ending balances we're going forward. Our property tax growth, we built in property tax projected revenues for both new residential and new commercial. The residential is primarily just Watson Ranch. And then the commercial is just the planned commercial development that's on the books now, and trying to estimate when that revenue is going to start showing up. So it shows we're kind of stay close to break even through about 25, 26 fiscal year, and then beginning in 26, 27, we start to grow. That's when the compounding of the property tax revenue from new development starts kicking in and starts ramping up. What this really does, it shows there's capacity in the future to deal with that new development and the demands on public safety services. Right? So we know we're going to have to fund a new fire station, apparatus for that fire station. Every fire station requires nine firefighters to staff it. So we have to make sure there's funding there to handle all of those things. And in terms of next steps, that's really our big next task, at least for me, is to look at the development, look at the projected revenue that's going to come in, and match that up with on a timing basis, right? On how do we go about financing a new fire station, which the costs have doubled in the last 5 years. It's just incredible, the cost of a new station, and then the cost of apparatus, and then adding in the staffing for that station. So we need to make sure that we kind of stay in balance, and we don't get too far out in front of that, revenue stream. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you for the presentation. Questions from board members?
Quick one.
Vice Chair Washington.
Yeah, that's one of the questions. It was a good question that we had when we had our finance committee. Was that just for the public to know, where does the money come from for the fire stations, for the new fire stations that we're talking about?
Excellent question. That's going to come from a combination of development fees and the property tax revenue, the additional property tax revenue coming in from that new development. So what we'll have to do is finance that station. So we'll issue a 30-year, do like a 30-year debt financing. I'm guessing 20 to 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's typically the life of a fire station. You want to spread those costs over the useful life of that station and over those that are going to benefit from having that station there. But it would require, unless there was a big inflow of funds all of a sudden, we're going to have to go out and finance that.
Okay.
That would be for the station and the apparatus, and then the property tax revenue would have to fund the additional staffing.
And there will be some monies coming from the old station, and once we sell the old station, it would also be part of that as well, correct?
Leave that up to the chief.
That is correct.
Okay. And then finally, has the county already adopted the fees that we were talking about earlier?
I believe the county,
Yes. It was adopted. I did a presentation to the Board of Supervisors. It was adopted unanimously I think the 60-day cooling off period is about over. So once that's over, then we'll be able to, on new development in the unincorporated portions of the district, charge the updated development fee.
Okay. And as always, Ken, good presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comment from board members? Could you turn bring up the graph that has all the color bars? Yes, this one here. Just for those who may not be familiar with this, and those who are tuned in, could you explain how we arrived at these areas where we have a deficit and path going forward? I think you already covered part of that, but just to reiterate that.
Yes, sir. So there's a lot of things going on in this graph.
Yes, there are.
And sometimes I've seen it so much that I gloss over it. But the brick component at the bottom is the contingency reserve or the rainy day reserve. And since that's based on 20% of expenditures, as expenditures go up, that contingency reserve goes up. The blue kind of wavy area is the operating reserve. The district is primarily property tax based, so they get their property taxes in December and April. So that period between April and December, we're still paying firefighters, paying all the expenses. That doesn't stop. So we have to have enough money on hand to cover those expenses. So we call that the dry period or the operating reserve. Absent that, the district would have to go out and borrow money to keep paying its firefighters and its other operating expenses. So it's very important we maintain that. I call it a dry period reserve or operating reserve. That's represented by that kind of that blue area. And we start dipping a little bit below that in 24, 25, 25, 26 as a forecast or a projection.
We're using that amount to make up the difference.
Pardon?
We're using that amount, the blue, in that to make up the difference
Yes.
for the balance.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And then the green bar represents the projected ending balance each year as we go forward. So you kind of want the green bar to stay above that kind of that blue area. That means you're ahead of your policy. If you go below it, then you're under the policy. And this is really to give us an idea of where the district is heading. And like I said, it gives us an indication that there is, once all this development happens and the property tax revenue is flowing in, there is capacity there to deal with those things I was just talking about in terms of debt service on a new fire station and paying salaries and benefits for the firefighters that are going to have to staff that station.
So the operating reserve is doing what we have it designed for, is there for. Because
sir.
we have a dry season, as you say, where we're not getting any revenue because of the way the tax structure works, and we have expenses. So in order to balance the budget, we use the blue part,
Yep.
and that keeps it solvent.
Yeah, and that throughout the year, and I do a monthly analysis for the chiefs, and that operating reserve, as we use it during that dry period between April and December, it's going down. And then when we get the property tax payment in December, it goes up, and we use it until April, and it goes back up, and
Kind of like having
we
a
follow that closely throughout the year.
kind of like having a checking account in the bank and a savings account. So when the checking
get paid
account
at
runs
the
low, you pull off the savings account.
You get paid at the end of the month, you got to make it last to the end of the next month.
All right, very good. Thank you for that explanation.
Sure thing.
I think that helps people understand it better. Anything else further from the board? If not, do we have any public comment on this?
No, Chair.
None? No, okay. Anybody from the audience wishing to comment on this?
Beth Marcus, I just have a question on the property tax. Because I know we have people moving in now at Watson Ranch. And I was wondering, is that an estimate or is that an actual as to who is there now? Am I asking that question right?
I think the best way to answer the question, Beth, is we build the budget based on the estimate that the county provides us every year. and that usually is very, very close. There's some delinquent tax payments. The county reimburses that to the district through what's called a teeter payment. And then the county collects that from the responsible party. So did that answer your question?
It
fully?
did. I thought it was an estimate. I was just curious because I know there's a lot of people moving in now, and
Yep.
hopefully there'll be a lot more very shortly, so.
Yeah, and that's why with Ken's presentation, as you see the revenues start to go up in the outlying years, that's based on the building projections of not only Watson Ranch, but the commercial buildings, apartment complexes, commercial warehouses, hotels that are occurring within the city's boundaries or the district's boundaries. So he's taking those and making estimates in the outlying years to help us, as he said, understand the capacity to grow with the population.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, so we have apartments, we have commercial as in hotel, we get tax from that. And we have new housing, we get tax from that. So it goes to the county and then we get it reimbursed over here. I think I've got that right.
You did. I think the big difference with a fire district is we're predominantly funded by property tax.
Yeah.
To where a city or other municipal governments, not only property tax, but they also enjoy the benefits of sales tax, transit and occupancy tax, and so forth.
Yeah.
But the fire district is limited predominantly to
the
property tax.
So we got a lot of building on, we noticed that, and it's a property value that's tax that we get revenue from. Very good.
The new building generates more demand, which the new building generates more property tax revenue to pay for the
Yeah.
increased demand. We just got to make sure it all balances out.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
No, sir.
Well, no, are there any other comments from the public? Then we will close the public hearing at this time, return to the board for further discussion, desired action.
There's no further discussion. I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 2023-28, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the American Canyon Fire Protection District adopting the final operating and capital budgets, or final budget, for fiscal year 2023-2024.
I'll second.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
Board Member Alba-Damos?
Yes.
Board Member Joseph?
Yes.
Board Member Oro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Washington?
Yes.
Chair Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Very good presentation this evening, and thank you all for your participation. Okay, moving on to our agenda item, chair board comments, committee reports, any future agenda items? Hearing none. Chief, oral report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple quick matters to update. First and foremost, we currently have one recruit firefighter in our academy. They'll be finishing up, he will be finishing up this week. That will bring us up to a total of 18 line personnel, so we'll be at 6 assigned personnel per shift. So that is, again, a step in the right direction. As we've shared in the past, the hiring and recruiting right now, industry-wide, is challenging. So we're very glad that we're able to get one additional firefighter paramedic hired, and then we will continue to work on filling the additional 3 vacancies. Obviously, as you saw through the proclamation, next month is Fire Prevention Month. So in keeping with that theme, we'll be having our annual open house at the fire station, 911 Donaldson, October 7th. And the first hour will be, much like we did last year, it'll be a quiet hour. So those members of the community that may be sensitive to light or loud noises, so they will feel welcome. They can come in, learn about fire prevention methods, get to know their firefighters that protect them every day, but without some of the visual stimulation and noise that could be challenging for them. So we're excited to have that again this year. We did it last year, and it was well received, so we'll be continuing with that. Fire season is still going on. Don't let a little bit of cooler weather or some damp roadways lull you into a sense of complacency that we still are in fire season. And traditionally in Napa County, October is where we see our largest fire growth if we get the offshore wind event. So just another reminder to the public that we're not quite done with fire season yet. If it starts raining tomorrow, though, I would be a very happy camper. And then the last item, Chief Campbell's been working with Director Ikeda from the city's Parks and Rec. We're going to be doing a upcoming joint training between the city's lifeguards and staff at the Aquatic Center and with our crews to, and this will be the first, it'll become an annual thing, but how to handle aquatic emergencies at the Aquatic Center here in town. So just another example of looking at different ways and better ways that we can help protect the community that we all serve. And with that, that concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any question for the chief?
No, sir.
All right, thank you for your report, chief. We look forward to that new event, to do that annually. Thank you. And again, any other chair comments, board comments, committee reports?
Chair, just a quick announcement. At the same day as the fire district's having your open house on October 7th, the Art Foundation will also be having a pumpkin path project out at Wetlands along with the Parks Foundation and 4-H and so forth. So for everyone to come out on the 7th, hang out at the fire station, come on down to Wetlands, paint some pumpkins, buy some pumpkins, and have some free coffee care of the Parks Foundation. So that's a day to be out and about.
All right, good day to fill that in. Sounds like a great family day.
Unless it rains.
Okay, anything else?
No, sir.
That being said, we have concluded our work for this evening. We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming today.
Good night, American Canyon.